point of a good education is to be able to tell when someone else is talking rot. People look at a CV for around 7 seconds. And what do they look for? Well, one of the things they seem to look for straight away is, are there any mistakes? Well, the 3 Gs that we distilled down from looking at all the qualities that people seek in other people. They're good, so that's all about integrity and kindness. Global, which is about openness and connectivity. And grit, which is about resilience and tenacity. Success is as easy as pie. P stands for passion, I stands for ideas, and E stands for energy. Our message is love Mondays. It's important to have a job that you like, and I think there is a job for everyone. Don't think what you can do, think what only you can do.
Do you love Mondays? Well, to be honest, I do, because I get to come here for London Real Studios, but most people don't like their job. And that's why this week we spoke to James Reed, who's the chairman of Reed, which is UK's largest recruiting company, and he spoke about this book, Why You? And he goes through 101 different interview questions that you should know. And the truth is, as James told me, is that most people just don't prepare. They spend more time preparing their dinner than they do for an interview, and they just don't know what to say. And I've had that happen so many times when candidates come in here looking to work for London Real, and I ask them basic questions like, tell me more about you, and they just don't have very good answers. So it's really all about preparation. And James really has some amazing tactics if you're looking to find a new job, and how you can prepare, and things just to think about to up your game when it comes to the interview process. And finally, I do believe there is a job where everyone can be happy and love Mondays. So sit back, relax, a lot of good stuff to learn here from James. And here at London Real, we are gearing up because yes, the Business Accelerator is back. Everyone's been asking, when can we get in? Because we want to learn how to turn our passion into a business, just like I did here with London Real. It's 8 weeks, and you finish up with an actual company with products to sell. I think it was 35% of our class last time actually collected revenues in the 6th week of the course. This is real talk. This is me on live calls 2 hours every single week, looking at you, clicking in to make sure you're actually building your business, and we're pumped up. So applications will be opening soon. Watch your email. You can probably click on a link below and go there. So we'll see you inside the Business Accelerator. And now I leave you with Mr. James Reed. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is James Reed, chairman of Reed, Britain's biggest and best-known recruitment brand, founded by your father, Sir Alex Reed, in 1960. You are the author of 2 best-selling books, which I have right here, Why You? 101 Interview Questions You'll Never Fear Again, and Put Your Mindset to Work, which you co-authored with Dr. Paul Stoltz. You have a degree in philosophy from Oxford, an MBA from Harvard Business School, but your biggest achievement has to be your 6 children. Welcome to London Real.
Thanks for that, Brian. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's the best thing I ever did.
I want to talk about that later because 6 is quite a number. But you had me from the get-go in YU because you quoted my favorite movie of all time in the very first chapter, which is when Bud Fox goes in to meet Gordon Gekko, and he looks himself in the mirror and he adjusts his tie and he says, "Life all comes down to a few moments. This is one of them."
That's right.
And that's probably the essence of really what you do, because when people go into those interviews, which you put companies and people together, it all is down to those few moments that can alter the course of someone's life, right?
Well, that's completely right. And that's the quote that begins the book. And I would agree with you. Life is all about those few moments. And the moment when you change path and start a new career or start a new job is a big, big moment. But a lot of people don't see it like that or forget that and don't prepare for the moment or not ready for the moment when it comes.
It's a lot of pressure thinking that your life can take a left turn or a right turn. In the book, you talk about the band The Police and how the drummer sat next to the guitar player in a tube, and that's how that band was created.
Yeah.
And if he had missed the train, it wouldn't have happened, right?
No, there's a lot of that in life, isn't there? There's a chance. And that was a conversation. And it was a conversation that led to them working together and starting a band that was a global phenomenon, a great success. And an interview is a conversation. And it's important that we realize that. And it's a conversation between two people who hopefully have something to give each other. Right. So when you're going for an interview, it's not just about whether I'm right for the job, it's whether the job is right for you and whether that's a job you want to do and it's a job you're going to be fulfilled in and feel happy doing. And I think that's just as important as whether you're going to get the job.
I want to talk about some actionable items that people watching and listening can learn from you when it comes to their next interview. But before that, you have this whole concept that you want people to love Mondays. That's the essence of what you do. And I was reminded of a quote I heard from Michael Bloomberg back in the day before he became mayor of New York City. And he used to say Sunday night was his favorite because he got to go to work the next day. And Michael Bloomberg was a Wall Streeter and he set up this company Bloomberg and it grew to this huge financial information services company, still is huge. And I remember I read his book and I wasn't loving my Mondays at that point. And I thought he was a little crazy. But now I do love my Mondays at London Real. But I was wondering, is that a possibility for everyone to love Mondays, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, there was a guy who was enjoying his work. And I really believe that's right. Our message is love Mondays. And it's a very simple message. And it's being heard by people who are not happy in their work. So if you're not happy as you were in your job, look for another one. And we can help you. And so, we've got thousands and thousands of jobs every day on our website, 250,000 at the moment. And they're there to help people, make a change. So we only live once. We spend most of our waking hours at work. It's important to have a job that you like. And I think there is a job for everyone that they will enjoy. And everyone has the possibility of loving Mondays.
Right. And we spend a third of our life at work, right?
Yeah, at least. It depends on what hours you're doing it.
Right.
I mean, if you think about your waking hours, probably, at least.
At least that. And then the next one is sleep after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Work, sleep, repeat, or whatever it is.
Right.
Work, eat, sleep, repeat. So, that's such an important thing. And it's where we find fulfillment. It's how people often define themselves. Who are you? They will describe what they do. I'm a footballer, or I'm a TV producer, or I'm a scientist. And that is such an important part of our fulfillment as human beings. And having meaningful work, I think, is really key to happiness.
You crowdsource a lot of your information in your books because you kind of have your finger on the pulse with so many people coming through your website and you get feedback from employers and employees. What's the biggest thing that we wouldn't know about searching for a job, thinking about a new career? What's the biggest mistake someone usually makes?
Well, you're right. We get 150 million people a year come to our website looking for jobs. We can survey them. We can see what their issues and concerns are. I mean, the biggest problem is not being prepared when you go for an interview, I would say. If you get that far, not being prepared is a problem. And 60% of our job seekers will say that they're nervous or worried about an interview. I don't know why the other 40% aren't, because they should be, because it's an important moment, as you said. But they probably are, but don't want to admit it. So it's a moment that people recognise is important, but often they're nervous and worried. And the more prepared you are, the more confident you're going to be when you get there. And that makes a big, big difference. And that's why we did the book. I mean, what we did for the book was a very simple thing. We asked our clients, the employers that we work with, what's your favorite interview question? And we got thousands and thousands of questions back. And we put the questions that were most commonly asked or most interesting in the book. So they're real questions being asked by real interviewers right now. So they're really relevant. And then we got workshops together of our recruitment specialists and said, how should someone think about answering this question? So there's a lot of information in there that I hope will put an end to some of that anxiety around the conversation, the moment, if you like.
Yeah, and I want to go over a few questions because you wrote an article for Huffington Post about kind of the 15 most feared questions. I want to go over a few of those soon, but you've said that people spend more time preparing dinner than they do preparing their interview, oftentimes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed how little preparation some people who come in for interviews with me have done, and it's not hard to do a bit of research. Yeah. So, and that's not going to work. And also, I think it's disappointing because if you spend more time thinking about what you're going to eat in your next meal or what type of fridge you're going to buy, you're missing the point that this is where you spend, your waking hours and your key time, when you're most alert and most focused at work. And so you want to really give that proper thought. And the beginning of the book is all about what are my motivations? Why do I want to do this job? And it's important to give that real thought before you embark on the journey of a job search.
I wonder if you could grade me as an employer with how I interview. So let me just tell you a little bit about my process and then tell me maybe what I'm thinking and maybe what someone else would think when I ask them to do that.
Right.
So say we'll advertise a position and someone will show some interest via email or your site. I've actually put an ad on your site.
Excellent.
Pretty happy so far with that.
You've got some applicants. Good.
Yeah, we did. The applicants are flying in. What I do is I ask everyone to send me a 3-minute selfie video. We're big into videos here. We do a lot of vlogging and videos, and we have an academy and accelerator programs, and we always get people to post videos talking about experiences. And I ask for a 3-minute selfie video, and I usually say, tell me about yourself and what you can do for London Real. And for me, that gives me so much information about them, whether I think it's worthy of a meeting, because I can tell so many things, which I'm sure you can tell me that I can tell, but character, poise, if they wear something presentable, all of those things tell me more about their character. But when they come in here and they sit down in the studio, I don't look at the CV. I don't actually ask them about the CV. I find that I just say, tell me about yourself. And I just ask them questions about them and their past for the first 10, 15 minutes. And I listen and watch. And I usually learn everything I need to know about their character, about the way they frame events in their life, if they're the victim all the time or if they're the one that are constantly overcoming these issues and looking for solutions. How do I do when it comes to...
Well, I think that's a good approach. I mean, tell me about yourself is the first question in the book. So that was the question that gets most commonly asked. So people who arrive for an interview and haven't prepared that question are not going to be in a good place because it's a big open question.
Right.
And you can make a lot of mistakes if you haven't thought about it before you get there and haven't thought about why you're there. So what you're asking, I think, is really good because you're asking, tell me about yourself and what can you do for me?
Right.
So that's the essence of the conversation. And you're getting 3 minutes of information before you decide to see anyone because there is an expectation when you sit down for an interview, it's going to last at least half an hour, I suppose. Yeah. So you're going to make a big time commitment so you can get to a short list. And I think that's a good way of doing it. And there are two things you're really looking for, I think, when you interview someone. But the first, when you want to employ someone or work with someone, you're looking for two things. You've got to trust them to be honest, and you've got to trust them to be competent. Okay. And when you start asking about character, there's a lot of integrity questions that people have that they're trying to find out about the person's character. And that's critical because you're going to decide whether you want them on the basis of whether they have integrity before whether they have competence. So if someone shows up and they say, well, I've done all these things, I've made all these great programs, and I think you should give me a job, and you don't think they're quite straight, you're going to discount them.
Right. And so you say the question is this, but the real question is this.
Yeah.
So when they say, tell me about yourself, what they're really looking for is for you to prove integrity, and then after that, show competence.
Yeah, that's what I think. And it's also, they want to know about you professionally, not personally. Right. Although they might want to know a little bit about you personally, and they might ask more questions about that afterwards. But they want to know about what you've done, what you want to do next, how you define yourself, and ultimately, as a result of that, what you have to contribute. It's all about what you have to do. Too many people go to job interviews, I think, thinking, what can I get out of this organisation or this conversation for myself? And they kind of forget that they're there to solve a problem for someone. Yeah. Entrepreneurs hire people to help them solve problems. And a lot of people forget that.
People talk about, the millennials, the me generation, probably maybe some of your kids might fall into that. Do you see a group of younger people coming through that are coming into those corporations say, what do I get, as opposed to what can I do for you?
Well, they don't get very far if they start like that. But I think, no, a lot of young people I think are fantastic candidates at the moment because they seem to be quite a serious-minded group, the millennials, who want to be committed. But what they do want, in my experience, is to find work that they find fulfilling and has meaning. So that's really important to young people. They want to join an organization that they feel has integrity and do work that is meaningful. And if you can offer them that, then you're going to get some good people.
Yeah.
But this thing about, thinking about an employer as a sort of food truck that's broken down by the side of the road, and what can I get? That's not going to get you anywhere very fast.
Yeah, I've had people write and tell me of all the things that they want from the job.
Yeah.
I see that a lot, more often than
That's a very basic mistake.
Right.
And I think, thinking about what you have to contribute and what the employer, can gain from having you in their team is the starting point.
What I look for when I'm asking the questions when they're finally here is two people could have the same thing happen to them and then have a completely different view on it. And so I'm looking to see how they process failure. That's really what I look for. And then where they go from there and where they go from there. And just the language they use, because that's super important for me.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day and I asked him, what's your favorite interview question? So, you told me yours was tell me about yourself. And he said his favorite question after he'd had the conversation with it was, what was your greatest failure? And he wanted to hear about that and what they'd learned. But I think it's interesting because I think sometimes, someone said to me a long time ago, sometimes when you think you're being unlucky, you're being lucky. And when you think you're being lucky, you're being unlucky. And it's not until a long time afterwards that you necessarily know. So it might feel like a failure, something at the time, but it might have led to a sequence of events that was a good thing.
Yeah, could be the character builder.
Yeah, certainly. I think people who've had setbacks earlier in life are often a lot more resilient than people who've flown through all their exams and got top degrees.
Yeah. Do people read CVs anymore?
Well, my next book, one that I'm working on, is called The 7-Second CV. And that's based on the thesis that people look at a CV for around 7 seconds. On average. And what do they look for? Well, one of the things they seem to look for straight away is, are there any mistakes on this CV?
Interesting.
Because that's one way to discount them. And then they're looking for sort of standout, whether the person's got the skills and experience, probably, for the job, but any standouts that will tell them a bit about their character. Because the CV gets you to the interview. It's your sort of marketing document that gets you to the interview. They can tell so much in the CV, but when they get to the interview, they're really going to be looking to explore your character more, I think.
Okay. So think of it just as that, a 7-second piece to be accurate and hopefully piques their interest with something on there.
Yeah. One of the questions in the book that came back from our crowdsource was, every CV has a lie in it. What's yours? So I thought that was quite a mean question. And I think, it shouldn't have a lie in it, your CV. That's the starting point. It should be honest and factual. You'd be surprised how many do. So, it's important that the CV is a factual summary of who you are and that it's well presented, error-free, and hopefully has some highlights in it that will attract their interest.
Okay. What about the creative CV? I've seen them now. They're Photoshopped. They've got really fascinating timelines and things like that. Are you a fan of that?
Yeah, I think that if that stands out, if it's good, if it looks good and it's compelling and it's right for whatever it is you're applying for, why not try it? I think years ago my cousin was applying for a job in a film company and he did his CV as a little drawing, a sequence of cartoons about his life and sent it on one piece of paper and he got the job. Yeah. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. That'll make an impression.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to stand out from a pile of them. If you've got 7 seconds to look at them, you think, oh, look at that one. So always look for ways to stand out.
Right. Let me ask you about a scenario I went through. We were both in Boston. Actually, we were both in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1993, right?
Yeah.
You were at
Well, I was there, 1990.
90,
so,
okay,
yeah,
all right.
So,
So I was there 89 and 93, So you were at Harvard down the road, I was at MIT. And I was a mechanical engineer, but I was going for jobs on Wall Street. So I remember flying from Boston into New York City, taking the taxi in from LaGuardia and being like, oh my gosh, here I am in the big time. And I got down to a company called Bankers Trust, which was right across from the World Trade Center at the time. And this was like the hotshot derivatives place. And so I got into the interview, and one of the questions the guys asked me was, how many gas stations in America? And I remember it. It was very poignant. And since I was an engineer, And I actually answered it because I started talking stream of consciousness. Well, there's so many cars, there's so many Americans, there's so many this. And I'm like, it's this many. And then the guy was like, okay. And then he said, tell me another way you could have figured that out. And he kept pushing me for these analytical questions. What advice do you give to people when they get hit with these questions?
Did you get that job?
I did, actually.
Yeah, I think you might have done.
Okay.
That's a curveball question.
Right.
And there are several in the book. I mean, like, how many traffic lights are there in London? You're not expected to know the answer, but what they're looking for is how do you process the question?
Right.
So how do you think about the problem? And, in that example, you use some analysis, in front of them to get to an answer that may or may not have been broadly in the area that it should have been. So you might say in London, how many traffic lights are there? I've got no idea. But maybe, in the square mile around here, there are, say, 50. And if London's, 100 square miles, maybe there are 5,000. That's a good guess.
Yeah.
And it gives you some sort of reasoning behind why you've come to a decision. So I think the important thing with those questions is don't panic, because they don't have a right answer in mind. I mean, one of the questions I like, which came out of the research, was, what do you think is the most searched for phrase on YouTube? And lots of people sort of look a little anxious and sort of titter. And in fact, the Korean edition, this question was removed from the Korean edition of the book.
Okay.
What do you think? Well, along with two other questions, which I'll mention in a minute, because they thought it was culturally inappropriate.
Okay.
But the most searched for phrase on YouTube is how to. How to fix a carburetor, how to bake a cake.
Yeah.
It's nothing sort of porn related at all. So, I thought that was quite interesting.
Okay.
But they won't know that in Korea now because it's not in the book.
Okay. And so knowing how to is what does that tell you? That
Well, YouTube is a great educational channel.
Right.
So people are going to look at YouTube for they want to learn things there. And it's become the sort of world's university, hasn't it?
Yeah,
You
very
can
much
find how to for anything and look it up on YouTube.
But a lot of people panic with a question like that. I guess it's designed to instill a little bit of panic and then just to see people's reasoning. But what if you're not good with numbers and someone hits you with one of those things?
Well, a question I was asked, I remember when I was a similar age to you, when you went for that interview at Bankers Trust, a question I was asked by a media company, and I got the job as well, but I'm not sure why, because I didn't get the answer right, was just this guy. I was going for a job as a media buyer at Saatchi & Saatchi here in London, and this guy just said to me, what's 7% of 60? And I was sitting there, under pressure, sort of working this out.
Saatchi, they asked that. Okay.
Yeah, because media buyers spend a lot of money.
Oh yeah, buyers.
So being numerate is important. But if you know how to calculate it, it's very easy. 7 6 is a 42, 4.2. Yeah. But if you're trying to remember how you did percentages at school, it takes a little while. So I took longer than I should have done to get to the answer.
Okay.
So there's advice how to do that in the book as well.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So don't panic. Walk it through. Take some big guess estimates and kind of move from there.
I think so. The curveball questions, these were originally invented, I think, by Google. Okay. And they became very popular because Google was the go-ahead company. And I think Google have dropped them a long time ago because they've decided that they don't really tell you whether the person's right for the job or not. Yeah. But everyone else is now using them. So you're going to get some.
Yeah. I used to ask, what's the circumference of the Earth? When I started interviewing for Bankers Trust, and these MBAs would come in, and I was like 23, and they would just look at me and be like, why are you doing this to me? And I think it probably didn't tell me anything. And very few people got it with even a factor of 100. Just because I wonder sometimes.
Would you have excluded them for getting it wrong?
I thought...
Have they made a ridiculous answer?
Yeah, I'm also thinking, we're in a derivatives floor. You need to know estimates and numbers and ballpark figures or you could lose a lot of money. So I was just thinking, maybe just think about it. Like, how long does it take to fly in a plane? How fast does the plane go? Those kinds of things. But,
yeah, if you process it, that's a good way of thinking. How to think about problems is it... See, that's at one end of the spectrum. The mistakes on CV is another. Because if people are discounting you because you have a mistake on your CV, because accuracy is important to them.
Yeah.
And if you can't get your CV right, they're going to kick you off.
Yeah, I do that with typos. Any typo, I don't reply, typically, because it tells me something, yeah. Talk to me about digital footprints, social media. Do people have to watch what they're posting on the Facebook and the Instagram and the Twitter? We both like Twitter, because their employers are going to check. Yeah,
they will check. I mean, because when you're looking to recruit someone, you're trying to find out as much as you can about them. So don't be surprised if people look you up online. And so, you want to keep those private if you're worried about that. I mean, there was a young woman I interviewed a year or so ago for a marketing job in our business, and she had a Twitter feed. So I thought I'll go and have a look at it. And it was quite funny because one of her most recent tweets was a sort of tirade of abuse against a bank, which was our biggest customer. But anyway, I got her in and I said, what about this? What's going on here? And it was quite entertaining because she thought she wasn't going to get the job, but it wasn't going to stop me giving her a job. Right. But it was an interesting example of a harmless one of what people can find very quickly about you. So I think the stuff that's online is open season, really. Yeah. Unless you want to keep it very confidential.
Is it
don't
legal
put it there.
in like America? Is it legal for them to check social media? Is there anything?
I don't know about America.
Okay.
I mean, it's not unusual here. I mean, a lot of employers don't, but everyone's got. A lot of people have got LinkedIn profiles. It would be very normal to look at that. Where else would you look? I mean, Twitter. If someone's got a Twitter feed, that's usually a public forum. You may as well have a look at it.
Yeah.
A lot of my colleagues have got Twitter feeds. They seem to be complaining about the rail service a lot. Well, I feel for them, but it's not a big issue for me.
Yeah, I watch some things, and sometimes there'll be a Twitter account that's gone awry, or there'll be a blog and strange things, and I don't know. It's made me change my mind a lot of times by what's out there. But if someone is ranting away on Twitter on a regular basis, I don't know if I want that energy around me.
Well, anger's misplaced energy, isn't it? So if you can channel energy, if you can channel it, you've probably got a really good person.
Okay. This is January right now. A lot of people, it's your high season, right? You have more hits this month than any time of the year.
Yeah, well, the beginning of the year is really big for us because I think everyone comes back after the Christmas holidays. The sort of new year, new career thing. It's a bit like look for a new job, get fit, lose weight. It all happens in January.
Yes.
So we've had a huge number of people visit the site and a huge number of new jobs posted on Read Co UK over the last month. So we've had 15 million visitors and 250,000 new jobs.
Okay. And is there any reason why people should think twice before looking for a new job? As in, do some people look for the new job to be the solution to all of their problems or problems at work? Because you talk about mindset a lot of times in your books as well. And as far as really thinking about who you are and what you want, is there a deeper message here when it comes to?
Yeah, I think it's really important to think carefully about why you might want to move jobs. It might be you're in a job and you're not happy because you don't like your manager. And it might be that you can move somewhere else in the company with a different manager. It might be that you enjoy the work you're doing, but you don't enjoy the people you're working with. So that could be a trigger for moving job, or it could be a trigger for moving department in the company you're already in. But then I think if you've reflected on it for a while, it is important to love Mondays. I keep coming back to this.
How many people love Mondays?
I think it's possible to love Mondays.
Yes?
Well, you just said you did.
I do, yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And
percentage of people in London that love Mondays?
Not high enough.
Okay.
Not high enough.
You're trying to get it up there.
Yeah, but I think it's possible. And so that should be a motivation to change. But you might change your job because you want to stay in the same sector and be doing the same thing, so you want to change firm, and that might be motivated by better pay or being near a home or other reasons that are quite rational.
Okay.
Or you might want to change direction completely. And if you're going to change direction completely, you want to think about that carefully because you're quite likely to have to step down a level or two in terms of your pay, and you might have to take some cuts to your lifestyle for a bit before you get going in the new career.
Okay. Let's talk about loving Mondays, because you must know a lot about company culture and why people love certain companies and don't love other companies. And I had a gentleman by the name of Daniel Pink in here who's written some great books. One is called To Sell Is Human. And he said that people want three things at work, if I remember correctly, and I was trying to remember them. One is mastery, one is autonomy, and one is purpose. And if you can give them those three, they will stay. And as long as they're not paid nothing, that's really what they're looking for. And the companies that can't keep people don't have one of those three, and maybe some don't have two of those three. Do you agree with that statement?
I think that's a really good summary. I mean, that's a good summary. I'd call it meaningful work.
Right.
So if you've got mastery, autonomy, and purpose, that really is the essence of meaning, isn't it?
I think so.
So you're doing something you feel is worthwhile. You've become competent and good at it, and you can get on with it. Someone once said to me, hire good people and let them get on with it.
Right.
That's a good message.
Yeah, it's very important. So dive deeper to those three things, like mastery, give them something, that they can see themselves getting better at and want to get better at.
But you have to give them the tools to do the job.
Correct.
So you have to give them good technology. You have to give them a good location. You have to give them a good, marketing support. There's
Yeah.
a lot of things you need to give people to give them real mastery.
Good training as well.
Yeah, because we're all competing with other people, aren't we?
Yeah,
So,
that's true. And then autonomy is very important. Like you said, let them get on with it. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. And unless you give them that, they're not going to really enjoy it. And then finally, purpose. Like, is this company doing a greater why? That's, a super important point.
Yeah, I really think so. And I feel that the work we do has great purpose because we're helping people change jobs, progress their careers, change their lives. I like to call the book a life-changing read. And so, it's important to us to be doing something purposeful.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of energy comes from. And I think it's, I say to people in our business, recruitment is a vocation. It's like teaching because you're actually changing people's lives. You're helping people improve their lives. And the people who realize that, the ones who enjoy it, the ones who master it and stay. We've got over 300 people in the business who have been with us more than 10 years.
Wow.
And that's for me, that's important.
Yeah, I've been learning more about company culture and trying to implement things around here. We're in the center of technology here in London, and I've had about 100 tech CEOs in here. And it's important to learn things from tech and not go overboard with tech. So putting a slide and a private chef in your company doesn't mean you have a company culture. It just means you have some perks. But at the same time, if you are thinking about your employees' happiness and what might make them more productive, then you're kind of going down that road. So we're constantly trying to think about ways we can make this place here an environment where people feel great about their work and love coming to work and brag about their workspace. Obviously, those three things we talked about earlier are important. Is there anything you're seeing more and more popular either here or that we're learning from Silicon Valley when it comes to workplace, how you treat employees?
Yeah, there is a new thing that's emerging, which we're just sort of starting to try out, which is desks that you can sit at, stand at, and go up and down.
Yeah.
Because I think the sort of sedentary lifestyle is not healthy. So sitting at a desk all day is not great. So if you can have a desk that adjusts and you can stand as well, I think that's better for people.
Yeah.
The lack of sort of mobility is not healthy. So I think that's a good development. And you don't have to have a fancy office to have a desk like that. You just have to spend a bit more money on desks.
Yeah, they say sitting's the new smoking.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
And if it is, we need to do something about it.
Yeah, we encourage daily training around here. Actually, in the morning after our stand-up meeting, we do a stand-up meeting, so it doesn't go too long either because we don't like people wasting time. We do like a exercise round and we play a song in the morning. So everyone's encouraged to do some standing squats or some push-ups. We play a song and then we get into work. And we also have something called maker mode in the morning. So for 3 hours, we are all creating something. We're not responding to emails. We're not responding to people. We are actually creating things. And then we open up communication after that.
So you've given a lot of thought to this.
Yeah, we have, because we try to really work at our optimal performance here. And so we've actually got someone in here who's our peak performance officer, and we look after these things. And funny enough, now that you're here, we're actually having someone coming in next Thursday and drawing blood from everyone in the company. That we're going to wear in vials around our necks. No, I'm just joking.
Did they volunteer for this?
They did. But we're actually going to do blood analysis on everyone to give them all of their nutritional, physical limitations. That information will be shared with them personally and privately, and then they can choose to adjust their diets or pick up things just because we want everyone working at peak performance around here. Because like you said, it's ultimately about the people. And I can have someone in here that can, in this business, one or two of the right people can 10x my business in a growth startup. And the wrong people could, 0x it.
Well, sure.
So it's so important.
When we did the research for Put Your Mindset to Work, we asked employers, how many of your regular employees would you trade for just one, with what we described as the 3G mindset, the winning mindset? Okay. We got lots of numbers back. And I asked a conference of business leaders this question, and one would say 5, one would say 3, one would say 8, and someone shouted out from the back, all of them, but the actual average was 7.
7.
And so trade.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of people who trade for just one.
And that's one exceptional person.
Yeah,
all right.
who had what we described as a winning mindset.
Okay. And what is the 3G mindset?
Oh, the 3G mindset. Well, the 3 Gs are good, so that's all about integrity and kindness.
Okay.
Global, which is about openness and connectivity.
Okay.
And grit, which is about resilience and tenacity.
Nice.
And those are the 3 Gs that we distill down from looking at all the qualities that people seek in other people.
Okay.
To those 3 Gs.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you're right. Why do I struggle to find good people in London? I put the ads on LinkedIn It's a big waste of my money. Sorry, LinkedIn, Microsoft. I started with your company, got some great leads so far. If I go pay a headhunter, it's egregious. It's very expensive. But the people are so important to this company.
Well, I'm pleased that our website's working.
Yeah, so far.
So far.
Yeah,
but no, I mean, it's a very competitive space. London and the southeast of England is a full employment area with lots of competition for talent.
Yeah.
So that's why there's so many companies looking. It's difficult to find people. That's the first thing to say. So you need, as an employer, to differentiate yourself as much as possible to attract the right people.
Okay.
But you should also use our new recruiter app.
Yes.
Which you can look for people from your phone, and it's a fantastic thing.
You were showing me that app.
If you're a client of ours and subscribing, we'll set you up.
Okay. Now, you spent money on this app. Talk to me about your mobile strategy. Was it something you knew that was important? You've always been a big investor in technology, correct?
Yeah, well, years ago, you mentioned I was at Harvard. I went back to my business school reunion after 5 years in 1995. And I realized at that reunion, this was the most valuable thing I learned at Harvard, was that 20% of my classmates were doing jobs that did not exist when we graduated 5 years before in 1990. They were all to do with the internet. So when I came back to England after the reunion, I took that really seriously and really invested in our new website, which was a tiny little thing.
And back in 95, 96.
Yeah, 95 we started it.
Not many websites.
No. We took it really seriously. We invested in it. We put some very clever people into it, and it really grew. So I was lucky. It was lucky to notice that at the reunion, but that the internet was going to be a big thing. And I remember banging on about it before people in England typically knew what a website was. In fact, the first conversation I had about the website was when someone tried to explain one. They said we should have a website. And I remember saying to him, what's that? So in 95, 96, you were sort of basically telling people what a website was. Yeah. And it grew from there, and we had lots of ideas that helped develop it. But I think now, the mobile thing, I feel as excited about the mobile as I did then about the internet, because it's just amazing, increasingly, what you can do with and from your phone. Yeah. So my New Year's resolution is to mobilize Reed, and that's in every sense, but in particular, to change the way people recruit and make it possible to recruit and find jobs from your phone. At the moment, it's possible to find jobs. We're pretty much the only people I'm aware of who will help you find people. So if you're looking for people, subscribe to our service, and you'll be amazed. I mean, every time someone says to me, I'm looking for someone, I say, well, how can I help you? I get my phone out, we'll put in a search, and some names start popping up. It's a great way to make friends. And, there was a guy who was looking for a Chinese speaker in Shrewsbury in the west of England, some small market town. And I was able to find him one in 5 minutes, just from my phone. So that's completely new and very exciting, I think.
Yeah, everything is going mobile, and you see it with increased traffic. And now you said with the app, there's so many things you can do, and it's such an intimate part of who we are. You interact with it differently than a computer. And so it's
in your pocket.
It's in your pocket, and you're touching it, and you're getting that immediate feedback. So very important to do things like that.
I have the wallet this side, the phone this side. The phone's by my heart. So, I think it's important.
Yeah.
I wouldn't switch them. So, because that's your way, the way you're contacting people.
Tell me about your job. You're what I would call a key person of influence, but you're at the very top of this organization. And so, like you said, you decided you want to go mobile. How do you decide what's the best use of your time? Obviously, writing books is a great way to scale an important message. What are the other things you decide, and how do you spend your time in order to guide the organization? Because that's pretty fascinating.
Well, someone said to me years ago, and I've always remembered it, he said, don't think what you can do, think what only you can do. And if you're running an organization, that's quite an insight. Because there are lots of things you can do, but there are fewer that only you can do. So I think, I say to people, there's an old saying of my dad's actually, that success is as easy as pie. And they always look a bit confused. What do you mean? And as I did when he said this to me. And success is as easy as pie. P stands for passion, I stands for ideas, and E stands for energy. And so I'm trying to inject that all the time into our business.
Okay.
And if we can bring new ideas and try things, that's good. We should be passionate about what we do, and we should do it with great energy. So at the top level, I'm doing that. But then, there might be things that, I can go on on a show like this and talk about what we're doing in our books in a way that other colleagues might not be able to. So I should do that, because that's something only I can do.
Right. And you know what you're not good at, and you hire other people to do those things.
Yeah, well, there are lots of things I'm not good at. Unfortunately, I've got quite a lot of people to help.
Right.
But I think that's important, to play to your strengths, I suppose, is what I'm saying. And think about your job, whatever it is, and really try and maximize your leverage. How can I move the dial round here in a significant way rather than just a sort of small contribution? And you'll be surprised when you start thinking about it that you can.
Yeah, that really has me thinking. Like, I need to focus more on what only I can do, and then hire people to do things I can't do much better than me, and then get those people in place to do the best things that they do.
Yeah, it might be that there are things you can do, but you should be prioritizing other things, or it might be things that you can't do very well, and you should get some help. But it's important just to think about your week and your time. There are only so many hours in the week. Which ones are going to enable you to have the maximum impact?
Yeah. Tell me about your father. What's it like to grow up with an accomplished father, an impressive father? I guess when you were born, he might not have been Sir Alex Reed, but maybe he was. What's that like to grow up? Is there pressure there to be successful? Is there pressure to go into family business? Or was it not that way?
My dad is a remarkable man. I mean, he started the business with £75 in 1960. He grew up in a small house in Hounslow, which was being bombed during the Second World War. Him and his brother, and his dad died when he was 18. So his mum, brother, and he lived together until he started the business. And she helped him a bit back in 1960. And he's a real ideas guy with a huge amount of energy. And I think he was always going to be successful in whatever he chose to do. But it's interesting, both he and his brother were entrepreneurs. And his dad was a graphic artist who used to do propaganda posters to drop on Germany in the Second World War. Okay. And he did the poster that's become very famous, we think, keep calm and carry on.
He did that?
Yeah.
Really? Your grandpa did that?
Yeah. And we were always thinking that, he used to say, my dad said, he'd also served in the First World War. So I think he was used to bombs going off. And he used to say to the family, as the air raid alarms started, keep calm, carry on. So I think this ended up being on a poster because he was used to all this going on, and they'd go down to the cellar or the bunker, and that's how life was.
Wow, I guess compared to World War I, the bombs probably weren't as bad.
Well, they weren't going off in London then, but he was in the trenches, his dad. So he had this sort of very different, but my father's an artist too, so there are a lot of artists in our family, and I think that's the importance of creativity is really strongly felt. So he's got a lot of energy, he likes ideas, he's very creative. And when he started the business, he started in Hounslow, which is his hometown, right by Heathrow Airport. And forgive the pun, but it took off. And it took off partly because there was so much demand for labour, because they were expanding Heathrow Airport. And a lot of the big international companies, mainly from the States, like Gillette, were opening up and expanding in that part of town because they could easily get there. And it took off, and he started in that way. And grew the business organically by opening new offices, and that's always been our strategy, to grow organically. I saw my dad just yesterday because it was 20 years ago that he made me chief executive. So I took him out for lunch and said thanks. So he's still going strong, and he's still got plenty of ideas for me whenever I see him.
And so what was that like growing up with him? I guess when you were born, Reed was a pretty prominent company?
Well, it was growing. I mean, he only became Sir Alec in 2011. So, it was growing, and it was floated on the stock exchange, I remember, in 1971. So it obviously had a successful 11 years.
Right.
And he was full of fun and energy, still is. Right. So it was good fun. But there was a joke, the perm in the 1960s were big hairdos. Well, in our house, a perm was always a permanent placement. So I never thought of a perm. So I grew up with temps and perms being something very recruitment specific, not hair related. And I suppose, and you hear conversations around the table. He used to take me, he had a retail business at one point. He used to take me, and I used to work there on Saturdays when I was a young teenager, and I'd go with him to the office. You soak up a lot of information like that. So people have got family businesses. It makes them quite commercial, I think, if they've grown up in those situations. So often I ask people, tell me about your family, and they sort of wonder why. But because I want to understand where they come from in that sense too.
Yeah. Did you always know you would be a part of Reed?
Well, I sort of grew up with it, so I wasn't sure whether I always knew I wanted to be, in the end, running my own show.
Okay.
And I did sit on the fence for quite a while because following a successful person is daunting. You worry, am I going to be up to it, to be honest? And one day he said to me, that job I've been talking to you about, it's going to be in the newspaper on Sunday. Do you want it or not? And that eventually got me off the fence. But I was 30 by then. So I'd done other jobs, and I think I'd built up more confidence that I could do it.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm glad I did, and it's been a great journey.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
I remember the last day of Harvard Business School, one of the best professors stood up in front of our class and he said, 50% of what you've learned here will be wrong, and we don't know which 50% it is. And that was the last thought. And that taught me not to not to expect things to be right all the time. What you think is right might well be wrong. Okay. And you should keep questioning, keep being curious, and keep looking and questioning.